Good afternoon. I would like to thank you from the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. My name is Larry Ellis. I'm Director for Diversity Initiative here on Hudson Valley campus. The individual who was key individual that brought these speakers to us today is Dr. Alice Malavasic. Did I pronounce it right? Professor of Education and Social Science. I've known this lady for a long time. She has worked for this institution for now over 21 years, and she's loved by all, especially the students. Without further ado, I will turn it over.
Let me step up here for a second. I'm going to let you guys stay in your seats, but we are going to be the panel discussion, taking questions from y'all. And anyone who has a question after, Mateo's going to do the general things first, but after that, if you have a personal question, come up to one of these speakers here. Myself, personally, I'm actually a professor of American history within the Department of Education and Social Sciences. I'm also the daughter of a man born in upstate New York, Herkimer County, and the woman, my mother, was in Berkeley County, South Carolina. So my heart's in both places. My heart is in the north, my heart is in the south. It tilts to the south. And I do have to say, our first person I'd like to introduce you to, Candy and I, Candace Fletcher, and I have known each other since 1978. We were a part of a biracial, bigender, eclectic group of young people, some of them still in college, some of them just graduated. We had a couple of Vietnam vets, all of us involved in Dick Riley's campaign, successful campaign, Democratic governor of South Carolina, and Candy, who was involved in Pug Ravenel's campaign against the incumbent Senator Strom Thurmond. Now, Pug lost, but the margin of victory was the closest to defeating Strom Thurmond in his entire Senate career. So the Pug Ravenel campaign was very, very strong. Candy, after 1978, went on to work in Washington, D.C. in a variety of campaigns, including the successful race for Doug Wilder, who was the first African-American governor of Virginia. That followed with, I'm going to get my little cheat sheet here. She worked in a variety of ballot measures. She worked for the Maryland ballot measure on pro-choice. She worked for a variety of state Senate campaigns in Florida. In 2008, she was part of the direct mail in targeted states for President Obama. Now she went on to form her own communications company with her daughter, Jill Fletcher, and she is one of the producers of this incredible film that we just watched, nominated for an Emmy. They say that just getting nominated is an honor, but quite frankly, I don't know how this thing lost Best Documentary. Our second speaker is Representative Terry Alexander, who I actually met in 1988. We were all involved in the Democratic campaigns of that election year. Terry is actually a minister. He's the senior pastor at Monumental Missionary Baptist Church in Florence. But he was elected to the South Carolina State House of Representatives in 2007, where he still serves. He represents 59th District in South Carolina. He's the vice chair of the House Education and Public Works Committee. He serves on the Regulations and Administration Procedures Committee. He is the regional vice chair of the National Black Caucus of state legislatures covering North Carolina and South Carolina. He also was one of the introductory speakers at Bernie Sanders' 2020 presidential kickoff campaign. So with that, I'm going to rejoin the panel and have Mateo start the panel discussion.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mateo Randall, Technical Assistant for the Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging. I'm going to be leading this guided discussion. The first question for our panelists is, what did you take from other perspectives towards the flag, and how did that reshape how you reapproach the topic?
You want to go first?
Well, let me go first. First of all, thank you.
He's a better
Thank you,
speaker,
Alice,
really.
for,
I'm prettier, but he's a better speaker.
thank you, Alice, for inviting us and for having this opportunity to give our input into this documentary. I mentioned to someone earlier, I've seen this documentary several times, but each time I see it, I see something different that make me teary-eyed in terms of, I'm glad we made this documentary. As we went through this process and as I looked at it, we did about 60 hours of filming. And from those 60 hours, we concise it to 2 hours. So we have hours upon hours upon hours of other interviews. Some interviews did not even make the documentation of how we see it and how other folks saw this Confederate flag. And I was telling someone outside, as you saw this flag, you see people on the right had differences of opinion, and people on the left of this flag had differences of opinion. I think it all depends on what crowd that you are speaking to that the flag would be defined. So as we went through this process, I noticed that it was being defined. It wasn't good or bad, right or wrong. It was just how folks saw the flag. And that's what our intentions was when we first started to take a look at this flag. We didn't want to be confrontational. We just wanted to be conversational so we could hear what it meant to some and what it meant to others. And I thought that turned out pretty well, basically.
Do you have anything to add to that?
Well, Will Folks was talking at the end.
Yeah.
He was the last person that they interviewed, and he said they don't know where the flag is. That's not true. The flag was put in the South Carolina History Museum. It's been there ever since. Nobody did anything bad with it. It's there, and probably will do that.
I remember listening to Shelby Foote, the late Shelby Foote, giving a lecture about the flag, and he did point out that it was never the Confederate flag, it was a battle flag. And I think the flag is exactly where Shelby Foote said it should be. He said it should be furled and then put in a history museum. And that is indeed where it is.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
And has been.
well, yeah, well, yes, and no, in a history museum, but in a box.
That's what, isn't that what, I think that's what being furled means.
Yeah. It's in a history museum, but I don't know where it is.
Oh, so you don't know where it's, so there's a difference of opinion there.
Yeah, it's in a history museum, but it's not being shown. It's just in the history museum wherever all that stuff is.
You know, my opinion of the flag, of course, as an adult, is significantly different than when I was a child, and we would spend my summers down there. As the film points out, everybody had a flag, but as a little kid, my identity with the flag was that I was a Southerner, and I think even today, whether you're African American or of European descent in the South, we all have a sense of pride in being Southern. We have a sense that it's something special. What I didn't understand as a child, though, was indeed that flag, while it meant to me as a child that I was Southern, I didn't understand as a child that it meant something totally different to other people. And it took me becoming an adult, and it took me, becoming a history professor, as a matter of fact, to understand the dimensions of that flag, especially the fact that, as the film points out, that flag was never really flown anywhere until the modern era, when you see the rise of the modern civil rights movement, and it's used as a result, or used by white supremacist organizations in response to the modern civil rights movement.
But, and when we went to start out to do this documentary.
Some people said we were crazy to do this.
Yeah, and we did get a lot of feedback on it, but our intent was, we approached the South Carolina ETV to discuss diversity and inclusion, because at that point in time, I did not like what I saw in that agency. and what they were portraying, particularly from an African American perspective. And so we had that discussion, and one of the partners who were not here said, well, we want to make a documentary. I said, we do? I was like, we do? Yeah. And we'll raise money. I said, we will. And we could do it on the flag. I said, oh. And so we started to do the research, and that's how we came to this. And like I said, as we were going and listening at the interviews, I marveled at the differences that those who supported the flag and those who didn't. And I still marvel, even today when I saw some of the discussion, I said, really? I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
So it's been an interesting dialogue, and each time I see this film, and each time we have a discussion, I'm grabbing something different. I guess that's because of the openness of that. The flag means that to you, then that means that to you. If it means this way to me, then it means that way to me. And in my spirit, I'm free enough to allow you to be free in yours, to accept it as you see it, and not as I see it. And I think that has become an issue. It's almost like I gotta agree with you or I'm wrong. And we should have to do that. I can disagree with you, even if you're in my party, even if you're on the left, further left of me. We can still disagree with how we interpret history. But the point is, let me see history the way I see it, and you see it the way you see it.
Listen.
For viewers who aren't from South Carolina or are familiar with its history, specifically with the flag, how does this film help them understand the broader issues around controversial symbols, and how can its message be applied to other complex topics?
Well, let me say this. Racism is not just for South Carolina. I was in the airport yesterday, coming here, and this little white lady with her little dog, she looked around, saw me, and she moved a little faster. She kept looking around, so she moved a little faster. I should have been intending to just walk behind her, But I know she'd look, pull her dog tight, kept walking, look at me. She was looking at me, just moving tight. So when you talk about South Carolina, you're not just talking about the only state in this country that has a sense of racism. And not only that, when I went to pick up my bag from the airport, this other guy came in, you sure that's not my bag? I said, why would I want your bag? And those little symbols, it may not mean nothing to you all, but from an African-American perspective, we're always on the defense in terms of racism. We're always mindful how other folks might see us.
I think it's important to recognize, too, that as the film points out at the end, that the Confederate flag is being used as a national symbol in many places of hatred. I know myself personally, I have to drive down a road to go visit a friend of mine, and she knows this because she knows it makes me crazy. I have to drive by a house here in upstate New York that flies the Confederate flag, and I want to tear my hair out every time I see it for multiple reasons. Not just because it represents, it's a symbol of hatred, it's been turned into a symbol of hatred, but also because I want to get out and say to the guy, well, why are you doing it? Did you have a Southerner in the Confederate Army? Why would someone in the North be flying a Confederate flag other than because you have some feeling of hatred in your heart? So I think I think this film is beneficial, to your question. I think the film is beneficial to show to people in the North who might think it's okay to use the Confederate flag as a symbol, not knowing its history. And this film points out its history.
Yeah, yes and no, Alice.
Okay.
And one thing I found out about this, and I think Senator Jackson is a very close friend of mine who mentioned it in the documentary. He said, to some people, it does not represent hate. And that's what I found out. To some people, it does not represent hate. To others, it does. Now, if you look at those who are constantly marching, you see the swastikas, you see the Confederate flag. The swastikas, the Confederate flag. Now, Congressman Clyburn mentioned in his documentary, but we had to edit it out because we couldn't prove it, is that in Germany, you can't use the swastikas. What they use? The Confederate flag. But we couldn't prove that, so we left it out. Every time you see the swastikas, you see the Confederate flag. But then you have some folks with Confederate dad, matter of fact, Senator Jackson's, his great-grandparents fought with the Confederate soldiers. So therefore, we found out that it wasn't all bad to everybody who had a Confederate flag. That didn't mean that they didn't like me, maybe they did. But it doesn't always represent that. Because if you look at the flag, Congressman Clyburn saw the flag as one thing, then Andrew Young saw it as something different. You see what I'm saying? So it's not all, and that was our point. We didn't want to show the bad of the flag. We want to show the flag in its full context so everybody can see it differently. But that's what we associated with hate. But it's not.
Candy, what do you think, how it should be used up here or in other states?
Well, something happened this morning. I had no idea anything like this would happen, but Alice and I were coming. This police officer was saying we couldn't park somewhere. Alice was explaining to them that we were running late and that I was a film producer, and she said it was about the Confederate flag downing of a flag. He looked at us and said, that flag never should have come down.
Even today.
Even today, that's what he said to us.
I don't know if he said that. He said, well, they were veterans too. Yes, in regards to the Confederate.
Yeah.
I know that we're spending a lot of time. Do we want to continue all those questions, or should we open it up?
I have one more really
Okay,
good question
and then we
I want to ask. So how has media like TV shows, movies, school textbooks shaped public perception of the Confederate flag in a positive or negative light? And how can individuals critically engage with that portrayal without becoming polarized? Specifically, like referring to the Dukes of Hazzard and the school textbooks provided by the United Daughters of the Confederacy.
I live 10 miles from the Darlington racetrack called the Southern 500. Every year, the place would be filled with Confederate flags. All over the states, guys with their Budweiser cans. And we wouldn't dare go in that direction because at the timing, that's what it represents. And I think we have to look at life in its context, understanding what our history meant, what it means to us, what it meant to other folks, and how we manage that sense of history even today. History says different things to different people. And at that time, the Confederate flag to a lot of people was a bad thing. So the Confederate flag, you just didn't bother it. That was just the nature of our being, and that's how this country accepted that Confederate flag. Now, as I grew older, I see it differently, I read about it differently, and I realize that it means different things to different people, regardless of their race, color, and their creed. And to see it on the Duke of Hazzard on that car, it didn't mean anything to me at the time, because that was just a part of the norm. And as I grew up and began to read and study, I said, oh, it means something different. And I think the guy at Duke of Hazzard says that, and then one guy in the interview, Senator Ford said, well, if y'all don't like the way these haters are portraying your flag, stop them from portraying your flag that way.
Yeah,
and that was a good answer to the question.
Yeah. In terms of the use in schools, that was part of the question?
Yeah, school textbooks. Yeah.
I can't imagine that the flag is taught in any way in New York State schools. So I'm not sure about that. And do the Daughters of the Confederacy, are they still I'm not sure, are they still influencing
no
textbooks in the South?
I was never a member, so I don't know.
Yeah.
They never invited me.
And, talking about learning from the film, God, I always wanted to go to the Old South KA weekend. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah,
I had no idea as a college student that the Kappa Alpha was so influential in incorporating the flag and the Old South lost cause myth onto college campuses. But I do remember, I went to Columbia College. You can't get any more Southern than that. It's all girls' college. I do remember how jealous I would get of those girls who got a date to the KA Old South weekend, and it literally was you got to wear the guys would dress up in Confederate uniforms, the girls got to wear the big bouffant antebellum dresses, and I was still young enough and still shallow enough and still unaware enough to think, oh, that's all I want to do is,
Right.
go wear one
Well,
of
it's
those
part of
dresses.
the myth.
Yes.
That's part of the myth. And this myth has been used and used. I was listening to something that Dr. Gates said one time on PBS, on his show, and he says it's the Daughters of the Confederacy help create and perpetrate the myth of the Old South. I mean, basically, slavery was about economics. South Carolina was one of the wealthiest states in the nation.
Yeah.
Always.
Had more
And that's
millionaires
because they
anywhere.
had free labor. You do that, you can be really rich if you don't have to pay your
and,
people.
and I guess that's the point. At that time, that was just the norm. Go to white girl, go to white girl. You get an invitation to KA,
That's right.
and it was going. That was just part of the norm. My going about, going to the Arlington Raceway. That was part of the norm, not to go over that direction. It was just what you do at that time. We didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know at the time that, separate but equal was was a big thing, because part of the norm was you don't go there.
I think that just proves how important education is.
Right,
I
right.
think we're all saying the same thing, that as young people, we didn't know our history. And I think that's a theme in the film, that you have to
That
know
you
your
don't
history.
know your
Right,
history.
right.
I agree with that. We do not know our history.
Yeah.
We don't teach our history,
Well,
even though we attempt to do it.
I teach it.
I know you teach it, but there's so many places they really don't attempt to. I haven't been in your classes, but I know this
She's
girl.
coming tomorrow.
She teaches history.
Sit in some classes.
I don't know if we teach history or not if we don't know it. I think we teach what we've been taught. But if you don't know the in-depths of our history, then you just don't know. You don't know where I come from. You don't know what I experienced. You know what you read. But I've kind of walked in that process. I was doing something the other day with health care, and it was talking about black male, blah, historical. I said, well, let me give you an experience from someone who actually practiced it. And when I gave them my experience, their whole historical context went out the window, because I was giving them my experience, not what they read, or what they what they put in status and data, but what someone who actually experienced it. And there is a difference from what you read about history and what I've lived history, what you read about history and what I've lived. It may be two different things totally, not unintentional, but that's just how it is, basically. That's
Well,
how
the
I see it.
Southern planters were some of the wealthiest people
Yeah.
in 1850, and any people on the planet except the rubber planters in Brazil.
Yeah.
I mean, this is incredible wealth.
They're
Yeah.
the original 1%er.
It had more million-
Or a 0.5%.
They had more millionaires in South Carolina anywhere else in the during the times of slavery.
Free labor, you know?
Yeah.
Pay them a subsistence living.
All right, well, thank you. Those are the questions I have for you guys. But if anyone wants to come up to the microphone up here to ask any of our panelists any sort of questions for the remaining time that we have.
Yeah, you don't have to, but if you ask the question from the audience, then we'll repeat the question so that it's picked up by the mic.
And I probably won't hear it anyway.
Probably.
When you get older, you don't
Do you
hear
have a
things.
question?
I did.
Go to the mic.
So for context, my name is Grace. I'm a human service major, and I am a social advocate. I've been working in social justice and social advocacy since I was 16. And I'm looking to find out what advice you guys have for other advisors or aspiring advisors looking to do what you guys did. Because there's lots of hot issues right now that we do need to fix.
Yeah. So let me repeat it. Grace, would you mind, because they should know your background, do you mind saying that all over again?
Hi, my name is Grace. I'm a social justice activist since I was around 16 years old in 2008, and I am currently a human service student. My question is, what would you suggest that advocates or aspiring advocates today do to try and be able to do the same thing that you guys are doing? There's many hot button issues that exist right now that we really should be addressing, and I think it'd be important for the student body to know how we could.
Talk about raising money.
Well, the most important thing, if you want to do a documentary like we do, you got to raise the money.
Yeah.
Because nothing's free, and you got to raise the money. I understand money better than a lot of people do, because I have done political fundraising all over the country, and lived in D.C. for 20 years, so I understand how money moves them. Moves things and moves people. You figure out how to raise the money, honey, and you can do what you want to do. But I know that's harder to do, and I sound flippant, but I'm not. Follow the money. I mean, people say that, you know?
And find you an issue that you can sell to your funders. Mm-hmm. Find an issue that makes them say, let's take a look at that. Because people give to causes, they don't give to people. If they give to people, if they give to causes, then you could very well be one of the causes they give to you. So find a cause that's relevant to you and relevant to your funders and be more easily persuadable to receive dollars and cents. I find a hot button issue.
That's definitely important. I mean,
Yeah.
can't do anything without money.
Yeah.
We're a capitalistic society, and we have to figure out how to deal with it.
I often tell people money makes you talk and it makes you be quiet.
Money has helped a lot of good people get elected to office, and that was my job.
Yeah, that was.
Terry got
that's her
elected.
field. Her field is raising money for candidates, yep, and causes. Mm-hmm. Any other questions from the audience? Are we pretty set? Yeah, Peter. Dr. Sawyer, by the way, former chairman of the department and my boss, and still my friend.
It's still your friend.
Thank you so much for coming here today and for producing this film. I didn't get a chance to watch it. I was teaching before I got here. But I just want to let you know a little bit about New York State and what we're working on now. I'm really curious about what your take on this is. And that is, New York State now has a general education requirement starting the fall of 2026 on civic discourse. I do a lot of work with public deliberation and bringing people together to engage them in conversations about, let's define the public good and let's kind of push that through our local communities. The concern I have is that civic discourse, people talk about civil discourse. And I can be civil with you and we can have a discourse, but if it doesn't upset the status quo, what good is that discourse? We can be as polite as we want. So the problem I think that we have is in terms of civic discourse and moving this forward and teaching students how to engage with people who have very different backgrounds from them, I'd be kind of curious what your advice is. What can we do to get people together who really come from very different power structures, very different situations? How can we bring people together to see each other's humanity, to see each other as Americans, and to move all of us forward to create some public good that's worth its time and effort?
To me, the human spirit is very resilient. And I was listening to this guy the other day, and he was talking about the four Gospels and how the four Gospels talked about the same thing, but they talked about it from different perspectives. And what became of that is that, Mark spoke to a different group, Luke spoke to a different group, Matthew spoke to a different group, and John spoke to holistically about trying to define who the Christ was. So I guess it all depends on who your audience might be, and you're trying to get your audience, who you're speaking to be receptive, because you and I can say the same thing, and it means something different to who's listening. So we had to be more definitive in my mind's eye. First of all, as we call it in the church area, exegeting your congregation, meaning that who's out there and what are they looking for in terms of some type of discourse or some type of dialogue. Because I don't care how right your conversation might be, somebody may not like it. So find your audience and just stick to it. And this is
Build that coalition,
yeah,
too.
Find
more people.
Yeah, this is a very diverse country. And I would tell folks, 30 years ago, black folk, white folk, that was it. Now, black folk, white folk, red folk, yellow folk, Hispanics, gay, LGBT, the whole gambit. So now you have to address them. But what some groups have done, this is my audience, this is my 30%, I'm gonna address my 30%. And that's it. I don't care about the others, because that's that base there, basically.
Peter, I think I have to be honest with you. I don't know how we do that right now. I think we're in a moment in our history where everybody has become so polarized. I think I would borrow from Lucy Davidowitz, who is the director of Holocaust Studies at Emory University, and of course famous for her book Denial. But she said in a documentary that we can debate opinion, and that's what we must do. We must debate opinion, but what we cannot debate is fact, and what we should not debate is fact. So I think if I was to try to get people together, that would be the first point I would try to get forward. Let's go ahead and debate opinion, but let's not take something and try to say that it's not real, I guess, if I'm making any kind of sense.
Yes, and in seminary they always tell you, you present something, but folks say, according to who?
Yeah.
It may be factual to you.
Well, what's the word they use now? Alternative facts.
Yeah.
And that's what's so scary.
What's factual to you may not necessarily be factual to me.
Yeah.
And I don't care how much, it all depends on
Yeah.
how you define it. But what you say is factual. I said, no, that's not quite
That's
true.
why I deal with money, because that's a fact.
Yeah, but that's
1
not.
plus 1 equals 2, so that's what I can understand.
Depending on what accounting you're dealing with.
Right. Let me very quickly to correct myself. Lucy Davidowitz is a Holocaust historian, but she's not at Emory. That's Deborah Lipschitz, who wrote the book Denial.
Okay.
So that was a slip of the tongue with me. But that's exactly what she meant. What she said is, you don't debate 1 plus 1 equals 2. That's not debatable. She says what you debate are opinions and subjectivity, but you don't lessen facts by giving something that's not a fact equal credence to it.
Exactly.
And what Lipschitz was talking about was that she refused to debate Holocaust deniers. She said, I'll debate people on why the Holocaust happened. She said, that's debatable. We can debate why it happened.
Right.
She said, but I will not debate a fact with a Holocaust denier.
Right. It did happen. In the Hebrew Bible is read from the right to the left. The Bibles now we have go from left to right. And the fact they say is that our language is first. That's not factual. Factual is that the Hebrew Bible was first. So how can our writing from left to right to be first? To some, that is a fact. But it's wrong, it's disagreeable. If the Hebrew Bible was first, and you're reading from here, you turning pages this way. Now we get it years later, and we turning it this way. And the fact of the matter is that the English Bible was first. It's not true. It all depends who's distributing the fact. That's why it's important to read. That's important to study and understand where you're coming from. Because what's factual to you? Not necessarily, and I know that's hard to pin.
Alternative facts is what we hear every day on the news. Alternative facts is what
Right. And that's what she wants.
present administration.
Yeah. An alternative fact wasn't even a fact. It wasn't even a term 30 years ago.
It wasn't even a term,
So
and that's scary to me.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions from the audience before we end this? I do want to end this, if you allow me to end it. You guys might not. Candy gave this to me this morning, and I really, we were so rushed and everything, I just took it and put it on my hand. And this little band reads, Clementa, Cynthia, Tawanza, Ethel, Sharonda, Daniel, Myra, Susie, DePayne. I'm going to try not that's the Charleston 9.
Yeah.
Those 9 beautiful souls who welcomed a young man into their Bible study. And I think that's probably the most important thing for us to remember today, to remember them, to remember their legacy, and try to make the world a better place.
Even for people who know how to count.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you, Candy, this is really.
I wear this a lot too, and we were giving these out afterwards, after this happened, in kind of a remembrance for these people. One of our House members,
More.
his sister was killed in Charleston. So it touches everybody in our state. I'm talking about in South Carolina.
I would say thank you to those. Hopefully, zillions of people are listening to the stream of this and learning from it.
Let's hope so.
Thank you.
I can tell you this much, we're going to watch a bunch of this in my classes. That's a given.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.